But it's not so much like informing people of like the overall grand scheme, but just like, what do you see? What does the current news mean? All that stuff is important.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm going to kick off the intro, and we will be good to go. Close all these crazy windows. Are you in Louisiana right now or Texas?
Louisiana. I'll be in California in a couple of days.
Okay.
Yeah, man. I'm speaking at a reparations conference, the Institute for the Black World.
Mm-hmm.
They're having an international or national reparations conference. So I'm speaking at that.
Didn't even know that existed, man. Didn't know that existed.
What did you say?
I said I did not know that existed. What are you going to be talking about?
Number of things, man. So just saying how cryptocurrency can be utilized as a tool for developing nations. And if you look at Black people here living here in America as being a society within society, then literally we are a nation within a nation.
A developing nation in that sense.
Mm-hmm. If we actually really want to be powerful, what we need to do is utilize the current economic systems that are in place and buy up assets, as many assets as we can. But taking that concept of just not only cryptocurrency, but buying assets and bringing that to Africa and really owning all the natural resources in Africa and utilizing cryptocurrency as a way of monetizing those assets. So, there's a lot that can be done with cryptocurrency in general, and a lot that can be actually done in terms of economic systems. In fact, the research paper that I'm working on deals with that,
Mm-hmm.
currency and crypto assets as being the base for a new economic system. So, as you know, our company name is Cryptonomics Wealth, and we chose that name because we see that cryptocurrency allows you to have your own economic system and is the basis for an actual economic system in itself. Cryptocurrency in general.
Honestly, that's kind of where I wanted you to go the last time we talked about this. And I had that question it's at the very tail end of the conversation. But I want to lead with that because I think that's kind of where we have a meeting of the minds in a sense. It's like, I think that there's some value there. It's just like, how do you make that happen? So with that, I'm gonna do the intro. This is the Todd Capital Millionaire Podcast, episode 45. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire, founder and the director of the investment club that falls under Todd Capital. We have over 200 members. We are doing some great things, seeing some great returns. Also the founder of our crowdfunded real estate firm, which is Todd Acquisitions. We're buying property number 2 next week. All this is possible through crowdfunding and just bringing the little bits of money amongst a lot of people to do big things. So thank you all for tuning in. The purpose of this podcast is to share the stories of successful African-American investors and business owners so that people can see and hear the stories of successful examples. Learn that business and investing are the keys to true financial success and generational wealth. We have Mr. Acai Montgomery. He's been on the show 2 times before. The first time he was talking about his rental property. He was talking about the deal that he bought in Louisiana. It'd be kind of cool to talk about the progress of that and talk about also the progress that he's making in his own, everything he's doing. If he's buying more real estate, I want to talk about that. If he's the development of his business, which kind of specializes in cryptocurrency, crypto assets, I want to talk about that. But mostly it's just to kind of talk about the current events and the current ecosystem of cryptocurrency. Is it real? Is it here to stay? What's the value in it? That's kind of what I want him to just answer. I know he has answers for these things. I know he gets these questions all the time. And we're publishing this probably tonight. Like, it's a current event show. With that, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me again, brother Oglesby. Yes, sir.
So, man, the first question I have is Bitcoin just recently hit 10,000. I'm not sure if it's still above 10,000, but I mean, what's your take on Bitcoin being valued as much as it's being valued?
Well, you know, I get asked this question, or this question comes up a lot, especially in our group that we have, Cryptonomics Wealth, about cryptocurrency valuation in general, but especially Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the big dog in the crypto market space. $10,000, that was people have been talking about Bitcoin reaching $10,000 for the last 6 months, last 9 months, last 12 months, about it reaching $10,000 and going all the way to $100,000, what we would call going to the moon. I don't trust Bitcoin. I don't trust the current valuations of Bitcoin. And the reason why I don't trust the current valuation of Bitcoin is because it's highly financialized right now, right? The only way in which we understand Bitcoin's value is through dollars and cents. We don't understand Bitcoin's value in terms of what it was designed to be used for. And the funny thing is Bitcoin was designed to be a currency, a digital currency. And we would like to think that digital currencies are new, but they really aren't. Digital currencies have been around ever since the SWIFT system was implemented by the banking industry. What happened was people lost faith in the banking industry. And as a result, Bitcoin was created. And Bitcoin was created as a payment transfer system. So you now have all this information that has been tokenized or monetized. The danger in that is, we know anytime that you start utilizing a currency as an asset, you start running into trouble. For instance, China has, trillions of dollars, trillions of our dollars just stacked up, literal dollars stacked up as a reserve asset, right? So the problem with having your currency as an asset is you can devalue it at any given time. Well, the main argument that people have been having is Bitcoin, what's Bitcoin backed by? And a lot of times the argument that you hear in contrast to that is like, well, US dollar isn't backed by anything. Well, that's true, right? I would hazard to say that Bitcoin is another fiat currency. So with being a fiat currency, it's a fiat currency. Our currency used to be backed by something. The United States dollar used to be backed by the gold standard, right? But it's no longer backed by gold. So what happens when you no longer have a currency that's backed by anything? You base it all on trust. It's really all it is trust.
Just to kind of circle back, what is a fiat currency?
Fiat currency is any currency. It is something basically that represents another thing, that's designed to represent another thing. So if I have a bunch of silver bars, right, and now I'm going to issue a note. What is our dollar called? A Federal Reserve note. Mm-hmm. I issue a note saying that this note can be traded in for this specific value or agreed upon value of silver or gold at the time, right? So when we have fiat currency is just a representation of real money. So you have real money and then you have a currency, and fiat currency is that.
So, I mean, in my opinion, it's like you have this idea that somebody created and they made it up and they started selling it off as currency. So my question to you is like, is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency the real deal?
The real deal in terms of?
Meaning like how real is this whole thing? Because, I mean, it's kind of like if I just popped up and said, I got these Charles dollars. And so now I'm selling Charles dollars and you can buy a Charles dollar for this much money. And so everybody goes out there and they buy Charles dollars. But in like the reality, like you can't use Charles dollars on the street. Like you can't use Charles dollars to buy anything. Like it's just an idea. It's an illusion. But I mean, basically my question is like, what legitimizes Bitcoin?
I know what you're asking. So when we think about the problem that we're having is many of us do not understand currency, what the difference between currency, money, and assets. We just don't understand it. So for instance, your currency is good wherever it's accepted, right? So the same way where we can say that The Japanese yen. Is the Japanese yen good currency?
In Japan it is.
In Japan, right? But does it stop it just because it's good currency and just because it's currency doesn't stop it from being good currency, right? It's not good currency here in the United States, but it's good currency in Japan, right?
Exactly. And so my question is, like, the currency is good on the internet. It's good amongst people who believe in crypto. But if you try to take it anywhere outside of crypto land, like, then people are like, what am I going to do with this? And another question I have is, if you can only really get access to crypto via the US dollar, how can crypto replace the US dollar?
Well, okay, that's a complex question, and that's different answers. So, one, I don't believe that crypto will replace the U.S. dollar. So I don't even believe that. The other part that I'll address is your currency is only as good as whoever will accept it. So what makes the United States what makes the United States dollar good currency is that everyone accepts it, right? Wherever I go. So if I have an agreement in place that I have these resources that I am willing to trade for this, that makes it good. So crypto, in the crypto market, I may not necessarily, for most part, I understand crypto through the sense of, oh, well, I can trade $500 for this amount of crypto, right? The issue becomes is when I actually want to trade real assets for it. If people want to trade me real assets for crypto, then it's good currency, right? That's what makes it good. I'm gonna add this other point. When I start thinking about what is good currency, do you remember Jeffrey Dollars with Toys R Us?
Yes.
Was Jeffrey Dollars good money outside of Toys R Us?
No.
But as long as I had things in Toys R Us that I was willing to exchange for, right? It was good money. Let me ask you this, I'm gonna bring in another story. So I was with my daughter and my sister, and my daughter had asked my sister about getting her something. And my sister said, well, do you got money? And my baby said, I got Chuck E. Cheese money. Right? Now to my daughter, Chuck E. Cheese money was good money. Why? Because Chuck E. Cheese, their currency, the coins or the tokens, allowed her access to any game that she wanted within Chuck E. Cheese. But what did my sister have to do? Or what did I have to do? I had to exchange my money, right, for someone else's money. So was my dollars good in terms of playing the game and getting access and utilization of the games? No. But what it did do was allow me to exchange one currency for another currency. So in the crypto market, the biggest barrier is that for crypto to be considered money is that it is not a unit of account, which means that I price my goods and services in terms of what it is, right? In terms of Bitcoin, I don't price my goods and services. That's where the biggest issue or the biggest barrier for adoption of widespread and mainstream adoption of crypto. But that's only if I'm thinking about crypto in terms of utilizing it here in the States. If I think about crypto or Bitcoin in terms of being able to transfer value to anyone in the world, now all of a sudden it becomes extremely powerful. Mm-hmm. So the thing about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin especially is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is the only currency that has exposure to every world market, almost every national market. If you have an internet connection, there's more than likely somebody there that has crypto or has some kind of cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. So as a result, in Zimbabwe, just last week, the price of crypto had already broken the $10,000 barrier. So when Bitcoin was $7,000 here in the United States, it was going for $10,000 and $12,000 in Zimbabwe. So there was an issue of price discovery. The price of Bitcoin in one arena was going to be different than it was in the United States. So when you think about it in that way, Bitcoin is acting like the currency, and there's arbitrage opportunities for Bitcoin because it has exposure to every currency. You can buy Bitcoin in Japanese yen, in the Korean won, in the Chinese yuan, in euros, in British pounds. It has exposure to all these different currencies. So to say that you can only buy crypto or Bitcoin in U.S. dollars is that's not the case.
Well, I think he misunderstood what I was saying. What I was saying is that you have to trade some non-Bitcoin, non-cryptocurrency for cryptocurrency. Like it doesn't just exist on its own. At some point in time, like you have to touch a real dollar. You have to touch a real currency.
As long as it's not utilized as a unit of account. See, when the whole issue that I was talking about with fiat currencies is fiat currencies are all based upon trust, right? The United States dollar is based upon trust. There's nothing backing it except for the good faith or promise, the productivity of the United States people, right? And the promise of the United States government. Okay. And in essence, the promise of the United States government is the Department of Defense, right? So in that instance,
we say that's the argument, but I think that it's a lot more than just the military. I think it's the strength of the strength of the economy. It's the opportunity that exists in America. It's the government backing it. It's all these different things that kind of legitimize the currency in America. Of course, the fact that we can blow somebody up helps, but I think it's a lot broader than just the military. But
I don't disagree with you. What I'm saying is that when it all comes down to it, we're talking about it comes down to economics, right? And economics is all about resources. So when I no longer can trade you my resources for your resources, the only other thing that I can do is take it from you.
Well, I think that saying that is another part of the reasons why I'm so not so sold on the full adoption of Bitcoin, just because you have all these people who have this massive amount of wealth in US dollars or other currencies that are going to oppose going to a crypto system.
Well, that's why I say I don't see Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies overtaking nationally backed fiat currencies. What I do see it as being is a competitor to national currencies, or even being utilized as proxy currencies, or currency, crypto being utilized, especially Bitcoin, as a currency when you're dealing with currency wars. So the devaluation and valuation of national currencies, and being able to arbitrage opportunities between the differences of the prices of each currency. That's what I do see. So I don't see crypto or Bitcoin specifically taking over or replacing national currencies. But what I do see is that it being utilized as a method of gaining economic power over another tool of economic power. That's what I do see it as.
Can you talk about that some more? So,
okay, when we think of a tool for economic power, we have to look at what does a currency do, right? It's supposed to represent some type of real money, right? And I would just say that to be frank about it, resources, assets, something that is scarce, that can be valued, that has utility value, and also, and as a result of its utility value, can also have financial value, right? So if I utilize crypto as a tool for valuing my resources, I now have real money, because that represents my resources. So I make the argument in one of my papers is, which one would you rather have? You can have Prince Hakeem, or you can have Prince T'Challa, right? Prince Hakeem had his own money. His face was on his own money. But what about Prince T'Challa of Wakanda? I'm pretty sure he utilized cryptocurrency, right? Because now you're moving into a more advanced society. And does it make sense, right? Does it make sense to have paper currency in a connected society? The reason why we had paper currency was because we were saying that, this piece of currency right here is authentic. This comes from me. There's anti-counterfeit measures in it, right? Does it make sense to have paper currencies in a connected society? Which brings up another issue about net neutrality and all of that, and connectivity, and the digital divide, all of that. But I see cryptocurrency as being a tool for bringing newly industrialized and developing countries online way quicker than what it took for the United States. The internet has done that. And so now it only makes sense that we're now taking the internet, and our money is being created on the internet as a result of a intranet of different connected computers. So I know I'm talking about a bunch of different things, but it's like distributed computing with distributed or cloud computing, right? You have all these computers and all your data is stored in the cloud. You have all these computers that are working together to try to solve an issue or to support a network. And now within that, you now have data being transferred. My argument that I've made about crypto, about Bitcoin, but what we have not addressed is the value of the data inside. We're getting ready to see what the true value of Bitcoin is when the IRS is finished doing all their tracking of all of Bitcoin transactions that they have not received taxes from. That's when you will see the true value of Bitcoin.
You would think that's interesting. I'm gonna get off of Bitcoin for a second, because my question is, like, every time I look at like the lesser coins, the lesser known coins rather, it's like you see these different things and they're trading, they have different values, but it's like, what do those things do? Are they just like, what is that stuff? Is my question. What is that stuff? I'm not even gonna try to make it sound smart. What is that stuff?
It depends. Each coin provides, not all coins provide value to the crypto space, right? So the crypto space was created for decentralization. What does that mean? That means more democratic governance, people being able to be involved in it. But let's get down to the brass tacks of it. If I have a system for payment transfer, that adds value to a space, right? If I now have something that allows me to have sovereign identity, I now have something that gives me access to financial data, right? Or I have access to a platform that allows me to trade any asset that I want and instantly provide ownership and registry outside of the government. That has value, right? So not all coins are the same. Some coins provide you with data, with tracking services, with identity services. Each coins that have value actually bring value and help add to the actual crypto market space and the crypto space in general. So one of the coins that I'm involved in is Augur. And Augur is a decentralized prediction platform. Well, what's the futures market? You're making predictions on what's going to happen. Yeah. However, with Augur, you can basically make predictions about anything. And you're utilizing a token to be able to have access to the platform, as well as you get rewards for being a reporter of events that happen. So if there's a market, if there's a market for who's going to make top 10 in your law school, right? I'm in my alma mater, Southern University Law Center. If there's going to be a market that you create for that, right? Well, if I'm now a reporter on that, I also get a financial incentive for telling the truth about who actually made it to the top 10%. So to answer your question in the short way is there are coins that provide different levels of value. But right now in the crypto space, we're only thinking about it in a financial sense. But my argument has always been that the crypto market is its own economic system that's budding. So the best way to value the crypto market is by looking at the economic factors and the economic drivers for, one, creating new cryptocurrencies, and also what value that they bring to the actual crypto space. Mm. So with if building a nation, right, you're going to need roads. You're going to need electricity. And there are different coins that provide that digital electricity or provide that digital road, that ability to transfer things of value along. So it just requires us to think about it in differently. One way of helping people understand it, I talk about the internet, right? Me and you are talking right now, but I can have a whole nother digital identity, right? I can have a whole nother presence. So your website, your website or our websites are just a digital representations of ourselves. And that can actually be that can be monetized, right? If your website becomes amazingly successful, well, guess what you can do? You can sell your website. You can show them your traffic. And then it's like, well, what's backing it? Nothing. Where does it reside? Can you touch it? No, not at all. But I can interact with it.
But you can touch it, though. It exists. It makes sense. And it's funny because I was going to talk to you about that, is comparing cryptocurrency to the internet. I think that the internet didn't necessarily destroy anything as much as it enhanced what was already there. So it's like, can you make an argument that crypto is going to enhance the system as opposed to just destroying what exists? Because that's the way it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me if Bitcoin is a way to make things easier. I had somebody tell me something about them being able to access their Bitcoin using like a secret key or something anywhere in the world. You don't have to carry your wallet anymore. You can just access your money wherever you are. No money transfers, none of that stuff. That makes sense. So it's like, is Bitcoin going to make things easier, or is it going to be Armageddon out here with US dollar and other currency? Because that's what's kind of hard to detach. When the internet came up, you had all these things were like, oh, well, you used to go to the pet store. Now you go to pets.com. You buy your pet here. Well, you used to go to the music store. Now you go to Napster, you download it. And it made sense. What I see now is you have people trying to get people to understand something that isn't necessarily useful, but they're trying to convince them that it's useful. And that's what doesn't make sense to me, because if we're trying to use it as a stock market, the stock market already exists. If we're trying to use it as whatever, it already exists. But I've heard arguments where people are saying like, oh, well, use the blockchain to manage transactions or manage repairs on a piece of property. So like, you always know that property had this happened, this happened, this happened. It's all stored in the blockchain, which is great. That makes sense. My thing is that I always get that picture of like the guys with the tinfoil hats when it comes to Bitcoin. It's like, it's a lot of like conspiracy.
Oh, you see me as the tinfoil hat guy?
Not you, but people on the internet, other people on the internet. But it's like, I'm just like, my goal is to get it to make sense, because if it can make sense, then I can see the value in it. But right now, I just see a lot of people who are speculating, keeping it 100. There's people who are in crypto because they see it making money, and they're like, oh man, it's making money. I got to make some money. They're not over here like, oh, well, if we look at the projections 5 years out, if this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, then I can see the value being this. They're just like, well, it's like, a lot of people are just gambling, and that's just what people do. Like, there's people who gamble, and there's people who invest, and there's a lot of people who are gambling in the Bitcoin market, but calling themselves investors.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I said it's a highly financialized space right now, because we're still coming into understanding what is true value. And to speak about the internet, right? The internet was not always for e-commerce, right? It was not always e-commerce. In fact, the internet started off as a ARPA project, which is Advanced Research Projects. It was started off as ARPANET, which was Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, right? And it was a Department of Defense project that was between Berkeley, Stanford, UCLA, MIT, and I think a few other schools, right? That's what it originally started off as a way of connecting computers. Then you get the advent of being able to communicate with email, right? And that's where email actually started to get, that's where the internet got wide range, when you started utilizing email. So after you got email, then you started realizing, hey, I can build up websites and really build in sites that I can interact with. Now, you may not necessarily been able to do commerce on those websites, but what we think of the internet today was not always the case. So the internet didn't make sense back. The internet didn't make sense back then. I remember people were like, "Oh, well, you can't trust what's on the internet." Now people are utilizing the internet as a source. People are losing their jobs off of what they say on Twitter, right? So to You say, well, Twitter's just this ethereal platform, and I just type in whatever it is that I want to say, right? My words aren't tangible, right? But they have tangible effects, right? So when we're understanding Bitcoin, I'm saying that there is another digital layer on top of this physical layer that we interact with on a daily basis, and we're still understanding how those layers affect us in the real world. In the real world, I make the point about somebody that said to somebody, "Well, I don't know that my money is in my bank account." Right? We know that a bank can lend out up to 90% of what's in your checking account, right? Or within your, we know that. So when I say to people that, go grab me your account right now, you can't. You can show me a digital representation of some ledger, some accounting ledger that's on their website. That's all you can show me. But you can simply grab me your account. However, that does not stop you from having spending power as a result of the money that's in your account. So I'm just saying for us is that this is a newly developing space, and we're like Sway right now because we ain't got all the answers.
And that's my problem. My problem is that we're acting as though we have all the answers, but we don't have the answers. And like that's what kind of scares me. Is like I'm all for it coming to fruition. I'm all for seeing tangible proof that it makes sense and that justifying the values. Right now, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that actually kind of happens with stocks sometimes too. Usually there's a little more evidence. But
remember with the stock market might be doing a lot more crazy things than what it is doing now because the stock market has circuit breakers. Crypto market doesn't have circuit breakers. So to say like, well, the stock market is, well, I understand the stock market. Okay. If those circuit breakers weren't in place, I would imagine that the stock market would look a lot like the crypto market now, especially with all the algorithmic and high-speed trading that goes on. So I don't get me wrong. I understand that the crypto market is definitely a new space. I also have investments within the equities market, right? But the fact is that yes, you are taking the risk going into the crypto market, but this is the future. And the reason why it's the future is because the same way that we're now becoming a connected society through the internet, you now have ways of transacting through the internet with its own currency. The same way that you have with HTML being its own coding language and CSS being its own coding language that allows you to create real things or interactive things on this digital layer. There are real things that we can do that will interact with us. However, like I said, currently the market is very financialized and is being utilized as a financial instrument, or even better, a speculative instrument. But once we start understanding what the utility value of these different coins are, we'll have a better idea, and it won't be so much speculation.
Yeah. So what is protecting investors from whoever controls the Bitcoin market from running off with their Bitcoins and the cash that's backing those transactions?
That is that one right there. That's the scariest part about the market. But one of the safe hedges, I guess you could say, about it is that the main ways that you can get into the crypto market is through an approved exchange. Well, who are the exchanges approved by? The United States government. You have to be registered as a money services business if you're going to be a fiat to crypto exchange. So as a result, can people run off with your money? Within that question are like four different questions that I would have to answer. So one, the development community, since Bitcoin is an open development community, anybody who's a coder can take a look at the code and also find bugs in it. So the fact that there's a whole bunch of eyes looking on it and a lot of expert eyes looking on it, there's an incentive for the code to be secure. Now that there's even more financial transactions that are going into it, people are definitely want to protect their money, right? So that's that. The other part is dealing with security of your account and things like that you have with the exchanges. So with the exchanges, they're all going to be based upon what the current trading value or exchange value of that coin at that time. Being that you have to go through the exchange means that they have to have the money in the bank in order to be able to, so that those transactions can happen.
So, why do you think that Bitcoin has run up so high so fast?
Pumping equity, pumping money into it. People are getting excited about Bitcoin, and the reason why I see the value going up is because it's just been talked about more, right? Like I said, with any currency, it's based upon trust, and in a sense, kind of popularity, and what the demand is. And this is the dangerous part about currency, is when currency is treated like a commodity. So if there's a major demand for the currency and there's a limited supply, such as Bitcoin, right? And the amount created on a daily basis is limited, right? When you have demand exceeding supply, what happens to price? Goes up. When supply is greater than demand, what happens? Price goes down. Another reason that I see the value jumping up is because the big boys, or as I would like to call the four horsemen, are getting involved in it, right? So folks like Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan and Chase, right? They're getting involved in it. Then you have the Commodities and Mercantile Exchange, CME Group, that's getting ready to create a futures exchange, right? So you have this interest by all the big boys who were the reason why Bitcoin even got created, because we lost trust in the banking system after the 2008 financial crisis. The same people who you were running away from are now trying to get involved in a space that wasn't designed for them to be there. Bitcoin, you had millions of people, or at one point in time, thousands or hundreds of people that were just transacting amongst each other. Now you have the big boys now getting in there with millions of small people now trying to transact. But the only problem is they're looking at it as an asset. So what are you going to do with an asset? You're going to hold on to it and hope that others get involved in it so that you can sell it to them later, right? So what we call the bigger fool theory, right? I buy it so that I can sell it to a more foolish fool. So you're going to see a lot of it's being utilized as a speculative asset, which is dangerous. It wasn't designed to be that. It was designed to be a payment transfer system. You have the big boys getting involved in it, and that's a space that they weren't designed to be in. And whenever you have the big boys come in, they're going to try to gain control, create an oligopoly within the space, and they're going to try to hoard as much of it as they can so that they can control it. Well, what happens when you remove liquidity? You remove volatility off the market. Therefore, you can actually have something that would operate more like a currency. But there's different things that are going on as a result. But I say that the main spark or spikes in the valuation of Bitcoin has been just because of its popularity.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you were saying something earlier about Bitcoin not having circuit breakers, and then you made a few other points, and it kind of begs the question of like what supports Bitcoin and what's going to keep it from creating that next bubble, creating that next crash. Because a lot of people they said the market is trading so high, so there's going to be a crash, but they don't realize like there's always been something outside of the market that created the crash. The savings and loans created a crash. The .com thing created a crash. The housing market created a crash. And so it's like a Bitcoin could run up so much, so fast, because it's not necessarily situated to handle that kind of volume. It's not situated to handle that kind of demand. And there's all this money being pumped in. And in actuality, it's truly speculative. There's nothing holding it up. There's nothing actually adding value to it. I think we had this conversation last time, and I said something along the lines of like, if you buy a stock, at the very least, you are going to get the assets of that company. So if you buy JP Morgan, since we're talking about JP Morgan today, at the very least, you at least know that they own the real estate that some of their businesses and some of their banks operate out of. If they're leasing them, or maybe they own some buildings, or they have something at the end of the day, if they go bankrupt, you can liquidate everything. all these companies, Under Armour, that you can liquidate everything. You can sell their old inventory to at least get your money back. With crypto, there's no guarantee. And so you have all these people pouring this money in, and then news of a crash like that triggers more crashes. And then you have real estate come tumbling down. You have stock market come tumbling down. And so it's like, could Bitcoin be the next trigger of the next recession? And you know what also that I want to say is that a lot of times people, they'll say like, oh, well, this person's endorsing Bitcoin, so that legitimizes Bitcoin. And I always tell people like George Bush is one of the biggest reasons for that last recession, because he put everybody into all these homes. He's probably a big part of the reasons why there's all this inflation in student loans, because he put a lot of people into school. Like, people don't really give him credit for that, but he got a lot of people into college. He got a lot of people buying homes because he thought that was the way to wealth, and it worked. But I say all that to say that I think I've heard hints of Donald Trump even promoting Bitcoin or saying that he thinks it's a good thing. And so people are saying like, oh, well, he agrees with it, so that means it's legit. It's what it should be. And so I'm saying like, it doesn't matter who agrees with it. It could be the big banks. The big banks co-sign the housing bubble too. So it's like all these people, you still have to think. It's like, is it really worth it? And if the answer is no, you're walking into a trap. And a lot of people that I've talked to are like, this doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, it's cool. Payment system, yeah, it's cool. Anonymous transactions, all this stuff is great. But is it worth $10,000? I don't know if it's worth $10,000. And the problem is like, it could go down to $600 and people lose everything. Go down back to 13 cents for all I know.
You know, it's worth whatever people are willing to pay for it, right? We know that with anything. But I want to deal with your first point about like, if you buy a stock, right? You and I both know that if a company goes bankrupt and they liquidate the assets, it ain't the stockholders who get paid first. It's the bond.
Yeah.
Right.
But at the end of the day, since you go bondholders, then you go preferred shareholders, then you go actual common stockholders.
Hold on. If the bondholders, if the company goes into bankruptcy and the bondholders, after it's liquidated and the bondholders are not satisfied, people holding stock do not get paid.
Yeah. But somebody got paid. Somebody got some money.
I don't disagree.
And a lot of that is factored into the stock price as well. A lot of that is factored into, like, if you have a company like GM who's more stable, who's more sturdy, the stock doesn't trade as high because they're not giving you more money for that risk you're taking. Like, it's all risk really at the end of the day. The problem is there's nothing backing Bitcoin at all. It's like buying stocks in the internet. Like, the internet is great, but nobody makes money from the internet. Like, nobody. We make money from the things created on top of the internet. We make money from the innovation that gets transacted through the internet, but nobody legit makes money from the internet.
You know, the only time that a stock is worth something to you, there's 3 times at which a stock is worth something to you. It is when you're getting ready to buy it, getting ready to sell it, or it pays dividends. It's the only time the stock is worth anything to you, right? Otherwise, it just sits on your books as an asset, right? Unless you're going to buy it, sell it, or it pays dividends. So I hear you in stocks. Yes, you're gaining some part of the company, right? You're really gaining a promise, right? It's really a promise. It's a note that evidences ownership.
But
right?
even if you have if you're trading options or you're trading futures, like, it's rooted in something. It's rooted at the end of the day. You're buying a contract for the right to buy something. And somebody has to honor that right. If nobody honors, futures are different, but if nobody honors that right, it's worthless. Like,
very true.
It's tied to something.
Very true. So it requires what? Trust in the SEC, right? Trust in all these enforcement bodies. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you, but that's why I don't treat crypto the same way that I treat stocks or I treat bonds. Yep. But I do recognize as it is right now, it's being utilized as a speculative asset, right? Which it shouldn't be. But the fact is that if you're able to make money off of it, then hey, go right ahead. But know that every tool has its purpose. I say this: crypto is a strategy, the same way that cash is a strategy, right? And if I'm able to utilize crypto as a way of expanding the amount of cash that I have access to, then so be it. If I'm able to take my gains out of crypto and buy other assets with it, then so be it, right? It all comes down to not necessarily belief, but this is what it is, right? This is what it is, and acting accordingly.
Yeah.
I don't disagree that it's very difficult to value. It's very difficult to evaluate, right? So that's why a lot of people are utilizing technical analysis in trading it, because what is the fundamental value? What is the intrinsic value of crypto?
And I think it's funny that you say that, and a lot of people are using technical analysis, and I was going to ask you a question about that, because a lot of people use the terms like correction or pullback, or this is a buying opportunity if it falls, but it's not the stock market. And I guess in a lot of instances, you can kind of use technical analysis to value commodities and value currencies or trade them. But like, who's to say that stuff makes sense in the crypto sense? Are we just using what we have to make it work, or is it like, are we just guessing?
Well, it's as with any skill, right? You're going to, or something that's new, you're going to find ways of where is it similar and where is it different? What skill sets can I utilize on this that may be applicable or may not be perfectly applicable, but have some applicability to it. So being that this is a new space, we don't have all the answers, and we're just now, the only way that you can get some answers is by asking the right questions. And you'll ask the right questions when you really start getting involved. So for instance, I never knew that I needed a strategy I never knew that I needed a strategy, an asset management strategy, until I started dealing with crypto and was like, oh, okay, I have my gains now. Am I going to reinvest it in a different crypto, or am I going to cash out my profits and let the rest ride? Now having a management strategy, the way that I have to move my money around in crypto is different than when I'm going on a bank account or I'm dealing with my Schwab account. So this is a new space, and those answers are going to come. And the only way that many people are able to understand it is through the lens of stocks. In some instances, it's through the lens of commodities. In other lenses, it's through the lens of currency. So that's the beauty about cryptocurrency or crypto assets in general, is that it can be its own asset class, but take on also aspects of other asset classes. And we're just trying to figure that out. Like, for instance, your website has a certain amount of value. It may not necessarily have tangible value, right? The value that you pay for the hosting services and for whatever content that you put on your site or advertisement, right? But it also has some value for your brand, right? So it all comes down to value. How do you value an asset? What do you define as an asset? What do you define as a resource? And are people willing to agree with you on that value?
So
fundamentals.
Why do you think Bitcoin dropped so hard after it pushed through 11,000?
The $10,000 barrier was like a psychological barrier for everyone. And once it hit 10,000, it was like, oh, what's it going to do next? You know what? Let me cut my profits right now, because I want to go. I want to make sure that I secure my profits. Behavioral finance. Behavioral.
People were just taking their gains. That's what I thought too. Honestly, that's all I expected it to happen at some point in time, and I knew that it was going to dip when that happened, because I'm using knowledge in a different area over in crypto. Where do you think crypto can go from here?
Ooh, now crypto in general is, like I said, that is the future. Is going to be the way in which we transfer identities, transfer property. It truly is the future. wow. Crypto can go wherever those with imagination and identified opportunities can go. We never expected that you would be able to find your mate on the internet. We never expected that, right? 20 years ago, if you would have said that to somebody, they would have looked at you like you were crazy. 20 years later, that's what's going on. Yep. So where do I see crypto going? I really see crypto being utilized in developing nations. And my paper is called, the paper is called Crypto Economics. So you got me excited, man. Globalization for the individual. Mm-hmm. That's crypto economics, globalization for the individual.
What does that mean?
That means that it used to be I have to go through a bank in order to transact with somebody across the world. Now, as long as you have an internet connection, I can transact with. I can transfer value. And markets, another way of having informal markets, or what others would call black markets or gray markets, but I see it as informal markets, being that a market is any place, right, or any structure where an exchange of value happens or exchange of assets happens. When you say to somebody, if somebody's willing to trade you an asset for crypto, then you're winning. Whatever asset that is, and whatever it is that you find of value. So that's how we think of it now. But in terms of communication, in terms of registration, in terms of transaction, as far as human interaction goes, whoever has imagination and is willing to either create or recognize opportunities. This is blue ocean. This is blue ocean for.
It's funny because I pulled up Instagram on accident. And now the trading app that we go through to use our investment club software, they're like, oh, you want to trade crypto? You can trade crypto through us now. It's getting scary out here, man. It's scary because I still think that the adoption of something this big is going to cause a crash. I think that there's a connection between.
That's what I'm gonna deal with. I'm gonna deal with that too. That was the other question about.
Huh?
My prediction, people ask me, well, what's going to happen with the crash? I do believe there's a crash coming, and I can't wait. I can't wait for the crash to come. And the reason why I can't wait for the crash to come is because once the crash happens, it'll be a lot cleaner space, right? The ICOs, you won't have as many fraudulent ICOs going on. It'll be a much more cleaner space. But when the crypto market does crash, right? I say 6 to 9 months or 12 to 18 months later, we're going to see a crash in the equities market.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the crypto market crash will kind of
become intertwined, because I've seen like Bitcoin investment trusts and ETFs popping up, and there's going to be things that are going to start mirroring Bitcoin markets. I was surprised that it hasn't happened sooner.
Well, the banks don't want to touch it. The banks are trying to figure out a way to deal with it. That's why they now have the Bitcoin futures market that's supposed to be.
And honestly, I think that the futures market is really just to protect the downside. I think that if you have futures, then you can go long, you can go short, and so then you can go and you open up a position that you can hedge now, and that's really a bit because I mean nobody knows how far it can go. So we know how high it can go, which is limitless. But we don't know like when the party's going to be over. We don't know how far the party is going to go when it is over. So it's like you want to be able to hedge what you're getting into. And I think that's why they kind of led with that instead of just hopping in there and saying, oh, well, the market's now open to invest in crypto.
Well, you know, I truly, the big banks war gamed on this. The fact is the people in the crypto space have not war gamed on how to deal with the banks. And I I've said this in the Cryptonomics Wealth group, is that if I were a big bank, I would crash crypto through the futures market.
And that's another thing that I think is going to happen too. They're going to like push it down and get it out of here. I can see it happening. Business is war, man.
It is war. It is war, because you now have what if you can't beat them, join them, and then when you join them, sabotage them. So I see that happening in the crypto market. But once that happens, they're going to exit the space, because people are going to lose trust in the crypto market.
Yeah.
And early adopters and the innovators in the space are going to be like, okay, good. We can move on with lessons learned, and really make this a strong and safe place, and really build up the economic system. This is my point. Creating another economic system, and also creating another layer that has tangible effects, right? That has a digital layer that has tangible effects. So, look, man, the way that we value things is through dollars and cents. The day will come when we start pricing things in terms of cryptocurrency. That day is coming. I don't know when it will happen, but I know it is coming.
So we have a few more minutes. Let's talk about how the Black community can leverage cryptocurrency in detail. Give me some meat.
All right. Okay. How the Black community get involved in space? www.cryptonomicswealth.com. CRYPTONOMIES wealth.com. Right? That's one way that you can get involved. We have some exciting new things coming up that we're going to be releasing in the group very soon. That's one way. Another way is by utilizing cryptocurrency as a way of backing resources. Right? They killed Muammar Gaddafi after he introduced the gold dinar, backing their currency by the actual natural resources. So when we start thinking about cryptocurrency and what resources do we have, right? What resources do we have as a Black community? Well, rent houses. If you own property or you own a timeshare, how can I tokenize my timeshare or tokenize my property, right? Where when you buy a token, you get access. If the implementation of digital currencies or cryptocurrencies is not as difficult as it seems. What it requires for us to do is have a fundamental understanding of value, resources, assets, money, and currency. Right? We understand that on a fundamental level. So, for instance, I have a $100,000 house. Right? I have a $100,000 house, and my mortgage at 4%. My mortgage plus interest and all that, right, would probably run me about
8 or 9,
550, 600.
That's it? Wow.
Oh man, well, it depends on where you're at, brother. Will cost me that, right? Well, what is somebody willing to pay for not necessarily the house, but temporary access to the house? Can I tokenize that? Can I monetize that? Yes. It may not necessarily be the most, in the current way, it may not necessarily be most convenient, but Airbnb is one idea, right?
It sounds like collateralized debt obligations. It sounds like you're effectively creating a security based off of a security.
Well, I'm creating a security. I'm creating a derivative. I'm creating a security off of an asset, which is my house, right? If I own my house, right? Now I've given you access to my house. Same thing with a timeshare. I'm leasing you access to this, right? That has utility, that has value, and I can sell it. It just all depends on what the value is to you. So understanding cryptocurrencies isn't necessarily that difficult when we start thinking about things that we already kind of have that operate in a similar manner. So Black folk, for us, what we should be doing is getting involved in maybe not necessarily cryptocurrency, but learning how to program blockchain. I always bring up the example of Black Planet, right? If we would have known that when we created our Black Planet pages that we were messing around with, $1 million and $1 billion companies or 6-figure and 7-figure salaries, right? We would have all taken it much seriously.
Yeah.
Right. And we would have
like how you have to code your page and drop in the HTML and all that stuff. People, exactly. I know some people who did some crazy stuff with some HTML. Didn't even know they could get paid for it.
Absolutely. So when we think of it in through that perspective, learning about blockchain technology, which cryptocurrency is based upon, right? If you think about it, blockchain technology is the underlying technology, and cryptocurrency is just one of the apps that you build on top of it. Learning blockchain technology, learning how to program in those various languages of those protocols. Like, for instance, Ethereum. Not only is Ethereum a currency, but it's a protocol, which makes it that much more powerful. Extremely powerful, because a lot of the currencies that are being built on top of the Ethereum protocol. So if we understand, hey, we as Black folks need to be involved in the cryptocurrency space, but specifically the blockchain space, learning how to code and learning how to program and learning about digital assets, because that's the new field, digital asset management. Getting involved in these new technologies and taking it seriously and pushing forward. We may not see the results for another 5 to 10 years, but it is coming, because if they crash cryptocurrency, what will stay is blockchain technology.
I think that's a good time to wrap this up. If you have any last words for the people, you can go ahead and share them now, man.
Oh man. Cryptocurrency, blockchain for reparations.
Very cool.
Tokenize the land, free the people. Nice.
And where can they find more about you on the internet, Instagram, Twitter? Where are you located?
Oh, I'm everywhere. On Twitter, Wealth Crypto, all one word. WEALTH Crypto, CRYPTO. Wealth Crypto on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram at Cryptonomics Wealth. You can find me on Instagram at socially_engineering. Yes, I'm always talking about crypto. I've been told that every conversation turns into a crypto conversation. So yes, free the land, free the people, justice or else. Blockchain technology and cryptocurrency is the way to go. Crypto assets and crypto market, crypto economics.
Cool. We will have you on the show another time, maybe like 10, 15 more episodes, talk to you about some, it's like, I don't even want to dilute the conversation by talking about things outside of crypto, because your knowledge is so deep in that space. So you're like the resident Todd Capital Millionaire Podcast crypto expert. So when new things pop up, we'll definitely bring you in to share your wisdom and your knowledge of the space. So thank you for coming on the podcast. Anybody who's interested in anything that we're doing, we're funding deal number 2. If you want to get in deal number 2, let us know. If you want to get in deal number 3 is coming right after deal number 2. We're doing great things, providing affordable housing for people that need it. That's really the key, is to see that niche. And I think that niche is just helping people who need reasonable housing to actually have housing. That creates the demand, because the demand's already there. So we're just meeting that need. You can find us at info@capitaltodd.com. The website is capitaltodd.com. We're dropping episodes multiple times a week. Wealth Talk Wednesdays coming back. Stock Talk Thursdays coming back. We might do Crypto Talk Tuesday. Who knows? The goal is just educate the people, bring a lot of wisdom and knowledge for the people. So I thank you all for tuning in. This has been Charles Oglesby, episode number 45.